Okay, welcome everyone. Sorry for the small delay there. We are calling our meeting to order on Tuesday, April 8th at 6:44 p.m. And I'd invite a council colleague to read our land acknowledgement, please.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. So just before we move to adoption of the agenda, some quick reminders. As we know, this Saturday, April 12th, is our annual Easter Bunny Hop from 10 a.m. to 12. We've seen hundreds of families participate in what is a very fun outdoor event where little ones can visit some local businesses and avail of the generosity of our Easter Bunny. So I know that the Old MBI is hard at work at organizing this event, and we look forward to seeing a lot of happy faces on the weekend. Also, just a quick reminder that we have the Arts and Culture Development Fund is now accepting applications until Friday. Applications can be completed online or by hard copy, and I know we're really excited to see the caliber of applications that come into that fund. Also this Saturday, as it turns out, we've got the St. Michael's Spring Craft Show. Of course, we know the Christmas one very well, but there is now a Spring Craft Show, and that again is on Saturday from 9:30 to 3:30. And finally, the final weekend of the Kemptville Youth Musical Theatre Company presents Mary Poppins again this weekend for its final productions. It's an incredible performance. So many talented youth from across our region, just not here in North Grenville. And I know some of the shows are already sold out for this weekend. So if you have any intention on seeing the show, I'd strongly encourage you to pick up your tickets early because it's truly been exceptional. It was an exceptional performance, and I know how much I enjoyed seeing the play this past Saturday. So with that, colleagues, we'll move to the adoption of the agenda. The recommendation is that the council agenda for April 8th be approved as presented. Looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan, Deputy Mayor, and I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Next, for our consent agenda, colleagues, you'll see a number of items on the consent agenda. I've already advised the clerk and CAO that I'd like to pull from the consent agenda the Whitney Road petition, the procedure bylaw final reading for consideration of a small amendment, and the new credit facility authorization so that we can hear, I think, from Mr. Dancy or Mr. Finley just on that matter. Looks good, but I believe it warrants consideration outside of the consent agenda. So those are my three items. I believe we'll be able to deal with them fairly quickly. Does any council colleague have anything else they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? Seeing none? Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The minutes for the Environmental Action Committee, Advisory Committee, there was terms of reference attached to it, and it indicated there were track changes. To be noted on that, there were no track changes and there was no date on that document that I could see. So perhaps we could just have that, maybe pull those so that those minutes would not be approved under consent since they're not complete.
Okay. So Ms. Remming will make sure to do that. So we'll pull that particular set of minutes. Okay, Ms. Remming is noting that. With that in mind, I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the consent agenda as amended. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Wilson.
Yep.
Great. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Wonderful. So with that, I think, Ms. Remming, your advice is that we'll start with the Whitney Road petition as per the items that were pulled from our consent agenda. I do understand we have a resident here this evening that's been quite involved in the development and presentation of the petition. And I understand that our opportunity this evening, colleagues, is to consider the recommendation to direct staff to bring forward an information and option report for council's consideration to assess the concerns outlined in the petition received from residents. So colleagues, any questions in regards to the recommendation before I ask for a mover? Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson, looking to you. I can see you. I have a good sight line because the screens have moved. Excellent. It's like a new day at council. So Councillor Wilson agrees to move. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So it's on the table. Thank you. And maybe I can just ask Mr. Finley, because he's here after a busy day of for Public Works in the snow clearing department. Mr. Finley, what's your understanding of timing in terms of a consideration of this particular petition?
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. And yes, it was an interesting morning for,
Yes,
for our staff, but the roads held out well. Once we received the petition, we did do a few speed assessments back in 2021, 22, and 23. However, due to the age of that, we would like to update those assessments. Typically, we look to have those done late spring or at least into the summer. If you get in too early with some of the inclement weather, you may not get the proper speeds assessed. So we would look probably to have some of that background data done in the summer, and most likely either late summer, early fall, come back with a recommendation or a report back to council.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Okay, any other questions, colleagues? Not seeing any. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Great. Thank you. That carries. Next, we're going to the procedure bylaw final reading. I know in my conversation with our acting clerk and our CEO, I did raise a concern just about the languaging, not the process, but sort of the languaging that was in our procedural bylaw. Consequently, she's advised that there is a simple amendment we can make under a particular section, just in terms of how agendas are formulated. And Ms. Remming, if you don't mind, perhaps you could speak to that. Thank you.
So just to reiterate your concern, Madam Mayor, it was just formalizing that the individuals who have the ability to propose agenda items. So we've added a few words under section 10.1 to add clarity, which speaks to the order of business. So essentially the section would now read, prior to each meeting, the clerk shall set the agenda. The clerk shall prepare for the use of members at meetings an agenda under the following headings as required. This is where the new language starts, to accommodate agenda items proposed by members and staff being inclusive of the CAO, members being inclusive of all members of council, and then it continues on with the original wording, which says subject to reorder and or removal of non-applicable items at the discretion of the clerk. To confirm, the agenda is not approved by the clerk. It is ultimately approved by council at the beginning of each meeting.
Thank you. So I think what Ms. Remming is suggesting is she is a way to articulate that formulation piece of the agenda, and I'm supportive of that being included. Do you need direction from council, Ms. Remming, for that particular amendment?
As long as council is in agreement with the minor amendment, the original resolution stands and it can be considered as provided.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, regarding that change, when it says before making those agenda changes or reordering before the meeting, does that mean before the date of publication or the date of the actual meeting?
Ms. Remming?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So that means before publication. So what ideally, once the agenda is out, it is out in the public and it's only subject to amendment at the council table. As we know, circumstances do arise where last minute reports are needed for timing issues. Those are typically released as an addenda to the agenda and is separate so that council knows what changes have been made. But ideally, it is before publication in most cases.
And certainly if there was any other consideration of an addendum, like a report that gets walked on or an urgent community issue that emerges, it is through the moving of the adoption of an agenda that any last minute items could be considered by council. So it's at the council table that if there's anything else at play that we hadn't foreseen in the days preceding or succeeding publication, that we have that capacity to make a last minute adjustment if required. Okay, great, thank you. Are there other areas? Council, of course, is our third reading. So we've been through this a few times, and I know the clerk's office has been kind enough to ensure that any concerns that we raised were accommodated. My only other question that came up as I was rereading the procedure bylaw was just around committees of council. I know that we have a number of committees, as we're aware, and we've developed a committee handbook that also governs, I think, the way in which committees work. Is there alignment between what's in here and our committee handbook, Ms. Reming? Or is that the next exercise?
So to confirm, the alignment of the document that was endorsed by council in January 2024 was considered in preparation of this section of the procedure. Our past procedure bylaw that is being repealed this evening did not encapsulate committees at all. So when we were folding the committees into this procedure bylaw, which was recommended and pretty typical amongst municipalities, we did do our best to ensure that the processes of the committee, as endorsed by the committee handbook, were encapsulated in this bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So with that, council colleagues, I don't see any other hands in regards to questions or concerns. So I will look for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that council conduct the third and final reading of procedure bylaw 1625, thereby fully enacting the rules and procedures for council at its local boards and committees. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Of course, we've been most eager to ensure this was implemented. I know it was lots of work and time on the part, I believe, of yourself, our former clerk, among others. So want to extend our thanks to you for getting us as up to date as possible. I recognize, of course, that we can't change our procedure bylaw if we learn of certain things that don't quite work with how council or staff seek to be as efficient and effective as possible on behalf of our residents. So I know that certainly it's not carved in stone. There's some fluidity, and changes certainly in the future can be made as we go along. But for now, I think it represents an excellent framework, a legislative framework within which we will conduct our business from this point forward. So if there's nothing else, I will call the question. All in favor? Great. So that carries. Thank you very much. And thank you again for all of the work and consideration. I believe we started this process over a year ago, so it's been a long time coming. Next, we're just going to go to our new credit facility authorization. And I don't know, Ms. Dunlop, who would like to speak to this particular report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Deputy Director Dancy is here this evening, so he is here to provide you a brief overview or answer any questions.
So, Mr. Dancy, would you mind just briefly summarizing the report?
Sure. As you are aware, Madam Mayor, and thank you, it's always a pleasure to be here. We were asked to obtain debt financing for this project last year, I believe, if not sooner. Unfortunately, due to timing and delays in getting our financial statements done, we weren't able to pursue much last year and wound up self-financing the 2024 expenses through our general cash flow. This year, we put out an RFP for this specific loan arrangements we didn't have much response. The Canada Infrastructure Bank said this project didn't interest them at this time. Infrastructure Ontario basically said, we invite you to apply for a loan through us, but didn't respond specifically to our RFP. And the CIBC actually came through with a full, well-documented proposal. The proposal itself is set up as a $26 million line of credit to start. There is no fees to set it up. There's no charges to carry or to withdraw from it. It's basically like the line of credit we have now, and all the terms and conditions are the same. The rate that they're providing is prime. They're prime less 0.5%, and with the paperwork being signed, we could start drawing by the end of the week probably. The beauty of this, the advantage of this proposal is its flexibility. We can draw on it at any time with a quick phone call, actually, and probably through our online application, and the money will be available immediately. We can, if we choose, we can lock in the borrowing long term, either with CIBC, or we can investigate working with the Infrastructure Ontario to securitize various portions of the loan going forward. And we've actually been in contact with them for last year's expenses to see what they can do to offer to offset last year's expense. So basically, we would be drawing immediately from this line and trying to securitize last year's expenses if the rates are beneficial to the municipality. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you very much. And of course, because this is to support the expansion of our water pollution control plant, then all interest paid on this loan is paid not through the general tax base, but through reserves that have been collected specifically to support the financing of the expansion of the sewage treatment plant, correct?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is correct. There will be no taxes used to pay off this loan.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And when you issued the RFP, did I hear you say that there was just one major bank, that there was only one
Correct.
applicant?
Or there was only one fully package. Like I said, the CIB wasn't interested in ours. Infrastructure Ontario said, please submit an application. Here's our rates. And CIBC came out with this proposal in full.
And would you consider the CIBC proposal competitive with Infrastructure Ontario?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, the rates themselves are a little bit higher than Infrastructure Ontario. They're about 1% under. For the revolving part, it's about 0.9% higher. At this time, their prime rate is 4.95 currently, so we'd be paying 4.44. And as of March 21st, the construction loan amount would be $352 through Infrastructure Ontario. But as I said, we would have to go through the application process. For this, when we were investigating last year, I was told that a loan of this amount would have to go to their board of directors for approval, which could take up to 6 months if we miss their window, because they only meet quarterly, I believe. So the interest rate itself would be higher, but the fact that it's available immediately and more flexible in terms of repayment, because we can, if there's a surplus that we don't want to carry, we can just pay down the credit itself and not have to securitize it.
Okay. So a little more flexibility.
Yeah, there's a lot more flexibility.
A lot more flexible. Okay. Well, that counts certainly at
for
times.
sure.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Council colleagues, anything else? Deputy Mayor?
Just in your summary of the report, you mentioned we can go to Infrastructure Ontario to securitize parts of the loan?
Yes.
So what would be the strategy in parts? That there was part of the loan that we didn't want to carry, but we're only carrying the balance. Is that correct?
I'm sorry. What we would be doing is taking the loan amount and the short-term line of credit immediately. If we decided, or if we met certain milestones, perhaps we might want to put them into long-term debt immediately, take advantage of a lower rate, and lock in if the rates are advantageous, or if. And that's pretty much would be it. We're not sure what the appetite for Infrastructure Ontario is for this kind of loan. We talked to the loan officer. She was, I'd say, non-committal.
Okay.
Didn't say no. didn't say yes. They prefer to finance longer, like the entire project, not just
Oh, I see.
transfers at a time. They would rather, if we were going to do that, they would prefer we waited until the end.
Do you know what the threshold is to avoid having it go to a quarterly board meeting?
I don't want to speak out of turn.
Okay.
I'm thinking $25 million.
Yes.
But it could be, so I would say it could be 20, but I'm thinking $25 million. But I can certainly check that out for you.
Final question. Yeah. So the plan could be that at some point in the future, you determine you don't need to access the CIBC line of credit, and you could go to Infrastructure Ontario to get the lower rate for part of it.
That would be, sorry, I messed in decorum, to the deputy mayor. Sorry. I think the long-term, or if this were to go through and if we could arrange it with Infrastructure Ontario, we would be getting the best of both worlds. We'd have the CIBC flexibility for the short-term lending, and hopefully we could lock in a lower rate through Infrastructure Ontario for the long-term debt as the project gets completed.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, colleagues? Not seeing any? Great, so Mr. Dancy, we appreciate your explanation. It's always good when you're financing such a large project to have a good appreciation of how we're obviously underwriting some of what is required to ensure that the expansion meets with a successful conclusion. So when I know the work is already underway, which is wonderful to see. So with that, colleagues, the recommendation is that council approve and enact bylaw 3625 to authorize the establishment and use of a revolving line of credit in the amount of $26 million to assist in the construction financing of the water pollution control plant expansion project. So I'll look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And over here, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. And if there are no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Great, thank you. That carries. So finally, under consent, we do see that we had pulled one set of minutes. These are previous meeting minutes. And I believe, Councillor Sullivan, you were referring to the advisory committee minutes, correct? Not the council meeting minutes. And you were speaking specifically of, Councillor?
The Environmental Action Advisory Committee?
Right. So February 24th, 2025. Can we just, Ms. Remming, move to defer those minutes and you can bring them back upon closer examination?
Absolutely, absolutely. So at this point, what I will advise is that the minutes are approved at the committee level, so I can check into that. At this point, council, the resolution and recommendation is that council accept these minutes for information, so that approval does take place at the advisory committee level, and I just want to make sure that council members are aware of that.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. But in terms of the receipt of the minutes, if we notice they're incomplete, we can defer the receipt of those particular minutes, correct? Okay. So with that, I will look then for a motion from Councillor Sullivan to defer receipt of the Environmental Action Advisory Committee minutes, February 24th, 2025. Councillor Sullivan? Good. And a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. I trust there are no comments or questions on this one. Councillor Sullivan? Deputy Mayor?
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think it's important that it's captured that we're deferring receipt so that we can be supplied with the track changes version.
Gotcha.
Right, thank you.
And the track changes version is of the terms of reference that were attached to the minutes.
Yes, because the document that was attached has no track changes and it doesn't have a date on it.
Okay.
So I don't know, perhaps that's the original terms of reference, perhaps it's the revised ones, maybe there's, but there's
Right.
no, it's not clear what it is.
Understood. Ms. Remming, does that give you enough to work with? Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anything else you need from those minutes, Councillor Sullivan? Okay. So with the deferral, I will call the vote. All in favor? Excellent. Thank you. Great. So with that, we're now going to reports, if I'm not mistaken, and we're starting with our pitch-in program. And Mr. Finley, you are here to present that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the first report we have for tonight, there's two pieces that we're looking for from council. The first is to proclaim April 20th, the week of April 20th through April 27th as Pitch-In Week. This is to support or encourages voluntary action to clean up public spaces within our community and keep it clean and beautiful. We have participated in this program and proclaimed this event since 2002, so we have been doing it for quite a while. So what can occur if individuals or groups wish to participate? They can register with the municipality, provide the location where they intend to do the cleanup, because it has to be done on public property. It's not for private cleanup. And of course, pitch-in bags are supplied on a first-come, first-served basis. They can be received at our front reception, or if residents or groups would like to contact our Public Works Department, we can arrange that pickup as well. So that is the first part of the report. The second part of the report is to seek some direction from council. Typically, we have received pitch-in bags free of charge through Pitch-In Canada. It's been a well-received program throughout the years that we had mentioned. We do typically give out 250 to 300 bags annually. Unfortunately, this year, we were unable to hear from Pitch-In Canada about additional bags. We went through their websites and different groups and we're unable to get responses from them. We do have approximately 300 bags available this year, but we're unsure about Pitch-In Canada providing new bags free of charge. Since we do see this as a valuable program in helping clean up the community and support the community, we are seeking council's direction that if we are unable to receive free bags from Pitch-In Canada, that we may look in the 2026 budget to source our own bags that'll stand out so that we know they're a pitch-in bag when it's collected. Like we mentioned, it is a great initiative. However, we just want to make sure we have that direction from council to move forward with that. That is the basis of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Finley. So do I understand we are limited to just 300 bags this year, or is there an opportunity to purchase more for this April spring cleanup?
Thank you for the question, through you, Madam Mayor. Currently, we only have the 300 bags that we had left over from last year. We did note we roughly annually only see 250 to 300 bags collected, so we're fairly confident we should have enough to get through this spring. However, that we'll probably run out of bags by the end of this year. So we'll be looking to secure some more for next year.
Is it possible to reserve some bags in advance? Because every year I know Oxford Mills doesn't get the bags that they're looking for, and I know this year the BIA has got a special spring cleanup event happening during that Earth Week or whatever. Or when will okay, I'll put it another way. When will the bags be available? Or we've got them already?
So, yeah, yes. Thank you for the question.
Okay, they're left over from last year.
Yes, the current 300 bags we have available, they're in our office now. Okay. We were actually making them available as of yesterday to residents that were looking for them, so they are available now.
Okay, thank you.
And certainly maybe where we have community associations or other groups that bring a certain amount of capacity with them, they can be prioritized, or certainly some bags can be put in reserve for those community associations and other groups that have the capacity to really make a difference with those bags. Of course, we know there are many residents who work exceedingly hard on behalf of their neighborhood associations as well, but I'm hopeful it can all work out in the balance, but maybe encourage your community groups, community associations, Deputy Mayor, to get to the front of the line, or certainly to get in line, not the front of the line, so that Mr. Finley and his team can disperse them. How do people get the bags? Can they just walk in and make a request through the clerks downstairs?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, they can get them from the front CSR staff. They'll have majority of the bags there. If they do call Public Works, we can reserve some bags, and they'll be sitting at the front for the
Okay.
organization to come pick
Perfect.
up.
Great, excellent. And I think council would be wholly supportive of ensuring we procure more bags in the future to meet all of the demand in the community. It's only growing. We're only growing as a community, which means we have more people who hopefully are willing to participate in the program, which is excellent, though I do hear, unfortunately, that, and I see that there is still quite a amount of litter and refuse in our ditches and on the side of the road. Even last night, I went for a quick walk, and I was struck by how on one of our main streets, I was struck by the amount of garbage. So unfortunately, we're still in a moment in time here in North Granville where pickup week is pretty important, or pickup month, I guess it is. So I'll look for council pitch-in. I said pick up because it involves a lot of picking up. But I'll look for council to receive the report entitled Pitch-in Program for information purposes, to declare April 20th through April 27th as Pitch-in Week specifically in North Granville, and provide direction for the procurement of bags for the future operation of the program. And certainly maybe we can consider closer to 500 bags for next year. So there'll be no anxiety about running out. So Councillor Whistling, would you like to move that, please? Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Seconds. Any final comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm wondering if, in promoting this, we could reach out to the high schools or any of the schools in the area and see if they could be provided with bags and have maybe a school initiative to go out. And I also went for a walk on the weekend, and I was struck by the amount of garbage that was actually leading between North Grenville High School and Riverside Park on the trail there. It was pretty deep with garbage, so maybe we could reach out to the schools.
Mr. Finley, what's been done up to now in terms of youth engagement?
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. Typically, we do promote it through our social media program, so it's out on all those programs. We have had different youth organizations, Girl Guides and groups like that have reached out to want to participate. I do believe some of the schools have reached out in the past, but it's something we'd have to look back into. But they typically, the ones that want to get engaged are quickly to reach out to us, and there are some youth programs that do.
Ms. Tolbert, do you have anything to add?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Department of Parks and Rec can probably do some additional outreach in support of the Department of Public Works to ensure that the schools are aware of the program and that other youth organizations receive the information and have the opportunity to reach out and receive some bags.
Great, that'd be awesome. Okay, Councillor Wilson?
Through you, Mayor Peckford, this is to add a little bit of comedy relief. Here we go. People could make a fortune picking up the empty beer cans and liquor bottles that are thrown in the ditches along the roads. So I would recommend that if you're doing Pitch-in Canada, that you separate your beer cans and your liquor bottles from the garbage and take them to a depot, and whatever money you receive, donate it somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a wise suggestion, so with a little bit of comedy thrown in along the way. Okay, so the motion's on the table. Any last comments? No? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great, that carries. Thank you. I would like to note, I failed to add that we have a very important Campbell Storm hockey game underway right now. It's a final game for the U13 Comp B team. How are they doing, Councillor Sullivan? Okay. Okay. All right. They're playing Gatineau this evening in our municipal arena. So we look forward to getting updates. We're cheering them on here from Council Chambers. So really crossing our fingers for good news and good shots in the back of the net. All right. So next we're moving to the award chemical total handling equipment. And I'll look to Mr. Finlay to give that report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this project was identified through the Capital Water and Wastewater Division. It was for the purchase of a skid steer. And we went through, similar to the tandem truck that was awarded through a previous meeting with council, is we went through the procurement of the canoe program, which allows for some reduced pricing due to bulk purchasing through municipalities. So we did go through that program. We did see some significantly lower costs due to that, and we are recommending the award to the JCB supplier, Delta Power Equipment, for $134,399 plus tax. I'm happy to answer any questions for council.
Thank you. Can you remind me, Mr. Finley, how long have we been using the canoe program for certain kinds of procurement?
So thank you for the question. It's been at least 4 years that I'm aware of. It probably may have been used before that, but that's been the limit of my knowledge. And it is typically for a lot of these heavier equipment pieces, so that we can work directly with the dealers to ensure we get the products that we need with the best price.
I'm so glad to hear that it's rendering notable savings in terms of some of these larger pieces of equipment. So that's great to see. Council, if there's nothing else, I'll read the recommendation, and that is that council approves the purchase of the JCB 3TS 8T telescopic skid steer from Delta Power Equipment for $134,399. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Council Wilson and Deputy Mayor, thank you. And if there are no other comments or questions, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Finley, when do you expect to receive that piece of equipment?
I believe it is in stock, so it should be within the month or two now. We should be able to get that.
Excellent. So you'll keep going for your last Public Works report then?
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the last report I have for council tonight is the award of landfill monitoring and engineering for the 4 waste disposal sites that the municipality owns and operates. So we have our 4 sites located in Kemptville, South Gore, Oxford Mills, and Burts Rapids, and each site through ministry requirements is required to be monitored through different sampling requirements. Those sampling analyzed, determine on best course of methods for continuing to monitor the sites in terms of ensuring that the waste there is contained. And of course, reports are created and presented to council on an annual basis. The current 5-year contract that we had expired in 2024, and so staff went out at the start of this year to issue a new RFP, which closed in March, on March 21st, 2025, to issue a new 5-year contract. We did receive 7 submissions that were all reviewed and analyzed, scored based on a technical and financial merit. And based on the review, staff are recommending that the award is to go to Aegis Canada Limited. They had the most fulsome report or RFP that based on our scoring. We do note the second part of the report is the 2025 costs did come above what our anticipated costs were done through the 2025 budget period. We had estimated just over $69,000 to do the monitoring and the reports for 2025. The cost from Aegis came in at $76,359, excluding applicable taxes. So this left us with about $6,800 not accounted for in those monitoring budgets. Through reviewing our operational budget, we did identify a second area where we could draw some funds, that outstanding funds from, so that we didn't have to draw from reserves or another funding source. We were able to keep everything within our operating budget. So we do recommend that we move forward to draw from our operating budget for this overage, and we also will adjust our numbers for future budgets, since we will have the next 4 years after this laid out for us. So that is the basis of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions for council.
All right, colleagues. Seems relatively straightforward. All right, I'm going to look to move the motion, and that is that council approve the award of request for proposal NG 2501 landfill monitoring and engineering services for a 5-year term to Aegis Canada in the amount of $76,359, excluding applicable taxes, and that council directs staff to draw the remaining amount or the overage from the 2025 budget allocation for changes to the environmental monitoring plan. Councillor O'Sullivan, would you like to move that, please? All right. Councillor Wilson, thank you. I know we've had some discussion about this in the past. I'm so glad to see that you had so many submissions. You had quite a few, Mr. Finley. So, and it looks like Aegis, from a staff perspective, is the most equipped and appropriate.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will say the full list. There were a number of qualified proposals. Just through the point system that we had through both technical and financial, they came out as a top rated, but there were a lot of good submissions that were provided, which was nice to see.
Indeed. Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Good, that carries. Thank you very much. And I believe now we're going to welcome Ms. Hurlburt for her update on youth mental health. Mental Health Initiatives Fund policy, not exclusive to youth, but more inclusive of all members of the community.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council, for having me here this evening to share about this program. On January 15th of this year, council directed staff to prepare a Mental Health Initiatives Fund policy to administer funding and fee waiver requests for related use of municipal facilities. Council also directed staff to consider elements within the draft policy for specific allocations for age-related funding. So the draft before you tonight is closely aligned with the process that we use for the community grants program. However, without the requirement for senior management review of the applications, and this new program obviously has its own timeline separate from the community grants program. Staff do not recommend, although it was discussed at the previous meeting, embedding age-related funding elements into the policy, just because local priorities are likely to vary over time and allocation decisions will remain with council. So this approach allows the fullest flexibility for council to respond to the needs of the time, rather than to lock in certain portions of funding to any particular age group. Council at the January meeting approved a $15,000 allocation in the 2025 budget for this program, as well as up to $5,000 in requests to waive fees for related use of municipal facilities. In recognition of the significant role that community organizations play in supporting mental health and well-being, this program is proposed to support community-led initiatives that improve system navigation, increase mental health literacy, promote well-being, and reduce stigma. Grants typically would range from $500 to $3,000, covering up to 75% of the total project costs, with exceptions made in extraordinary circumstances, and that flexibility would lie with council. Eligibility criteria include not-for-profit, charitable, or community-based organizations primarily serving North Grenville residents. The application and evaluation process would be that the applications would be reviewed by myself, and then as long as they're deemed complete and meet the criteria, they would be brought to council in a closed session for consideration, and council would make final decisions based on the evaluation matrix in the proposed program. And then every year, each successful applicant would be required to submit a final report that would be reviewed by staff, and that would maintain their future eligibility in the program. I'm happy to answer any questions related to the policy that is drafted before you. So, yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan and then Deputy Mayor. Oh, okay, I saw both your hands. Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Sullivan.
Canadian. Through you, Madam Mayor, and forgive me, Ms. Hurlbert, what is your title again, so I can address you properly?
The Manager of Community and Leisure Services.
Okay, so through you, Madam Mayor, to the Manager of Community and Leisure Services. In the last little while, last year and a half, we've seen an Arts Development Fund and a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Fund, and I think the clerk's office has been engaged in trying to streamline the application process, the evaluation process. So this, I'm assuming, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this fund, the Mental Health Initiatives Fund, will have the same sort of process in terms of how people can apply and how the projects are evaluated and reported on afterwards. Is that correct?
So this program, as I said, is aligned with the one that I'm most familiar with and administer, which is the community grants, the community grants program. It's not necessarily been aligned with the others, which each have their differences, and also are going through a committee separate from these, which would go straight through council. So that's what's proposed before you this evening. But if you would like some changes, I'm open to hearing.
I would have to take a look at all the details to suggest some changes. But it sounds to me that if it's aligned with a similar process, community grants, we're not charging staff with a whole bunch of different processes. So that's fair enough.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Ms. Hurlbert. I want to thank you for preparing this report, preparing this initiative, and clarifying that there are no age restrictions. And as you said, from time to time, the needs in the community and for individuals or a number of people change as depending on what's going on. So I'm very happy with the program as it is, and I want to thank you for all the work that you've done for it. So those are my only comments.
Excellent, thank you. I think it's wonderful that we're able to be a partner in creating access, certainly to crucial mental health programming. I have a concern about the intake. I believe that because sometimes the mental health needs in our community, as they would in any community, may fluctuate as a consequence of crises or incidents. I feel that one intake a year may be very limiting. If in fact a need arose that just slightly fell outside of a particular timeline, and we know that in certain cases groups are willing to step up, they're willing to pursue plans or offer a program to the community outside of what would have been potentially what they would have anticipated. So I'm wondering about, I'm just wondering if we need to impose that in the policy or if we can create some flex. So if there is an emergent need that a community group wouldn't have foreseen but responds to something that's happened. We can all recall part of the catalyst for this policy, of course, is the repeated closure of St. Mike's due to very severe threats that were very disorienting, among some tragic deaths in our community of youth. So I'm just thinking and reflecting on how this policy can be nimble so that it allows organizations to step up with our support in ways that maybe they wouldn't have planned. Ms. Hurlbert, do you have any comments on that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the question. I would acknowledge that the fund is limited to $15,000 and consider perhaps at the time of the first round, which is expected to be in the first portion of the year every year, what could be done is that if there are funds remaining after that application process, that in addition to approving the applications per council's wishes at the time, there could be additional direction as to how to use the remaining funds. And so in particular, you could instruct staff to have a second round of applications received at a later time in the year as an option. But that's how I would suggest we manage that moving forward, just in consideration of the fact that the $15,000 probably won't go very far. I'm thinking of sponsorships recently of mental health programs, and each one has been about $3,500 or, up to that amount. So we're only going to be able to approve a few things each year through this program, in all likelihood.
Indeed. Well, I'm not opposed to your suggestion. I do believe, however, that maybe a little bit of money could be set aside in the event that there is that sort of emergent need that would be unforeseen, because, or you choose to bring to council's attention the fact that there is a request to facilitate access to a particular mental health initiative that's in response to something that's happened into the community, so that we at least have the discretion to possibly support some of those community-based efforts that weren't part of a more structured intake, if you will, because as I think we've seen with your leadership, Ms. Tolbert, where we were able to step up and partner in a number of ways that I think were very meaningful to the community in terms of providing some access to programming, whether it was for parents or youth, and I just wouldn't want to not be able to do that, if you know what I mean.
I absolutely know what you mean. Thank you. I think we'd have to consider that at the time. I think that this fund is intended for a specific purpose, but I think sometimes things come before council that are unexpected, like we experienced last year, and council found ways that they were able to respond to those needs at the time. And I think that, in that type of situation, that's exactly how council would respond. I wouldn't necessarily think that we would want to reserve a portion of the funds for just in case, and then see them potentially go unused, especially with such limited funds for this program. So I would consider, or I would recommend that we approach those things as they arise, and with what flexibility council already has.
Yes, Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. The intake and deadlines component under this policy also allows, let's say for chance that the deadline of the first intake is coming and there is lesser than anticipated amount of applications. There's also enough flexibility written within this policy that we can extend deadlines. We can also look with the manager of Community and Leisure Services with her community involvement, both from the youth and the other committee and the other committees of council and committees of the community at large. I believe that she has her ear to the ground enough that should there be additional resources or requirements, she can bring those to my attention or to council's direct attention.
Yes, I just don't want a deadline getting in the way. If in fact something happened that was so serious that as we stepped up previously, we would want to again. So I think I have assurances that that's still on the table, if you will, beyond the scope of this program, that discretion exists. And I know how much I think it's meant to the community that we've been able to be a partner where it's been unexpected but necessary. So, okay. So with that, council colleagues, I believe I don't see any other hands. So the recommendation is that council approve the Mental Health Initiatives Fund Policy as presented and direct staff to proceed with the 2025 intake of funding applications. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Sullivan and Deputy Mayor, thank you. And if there are no other comments, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great, thank you. So next is our Environmental Action Advisory Committee. We were just speaking of a significant resolution that came from a recent discussion. Who's filling us in? Yes, Ms. Remming. Okay, you can remind me of all the details. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I am presenting this on behalf of the Environmental Action Advisory Committee. Essentially, after looking at the terms of reference that were approved by council resolution in January of 2024, basically the initial terms of reference focused predominantly on waste diversion. So although the terms of reference did acknowledge climate change and energy efficiency on a cursory and high-level note, it was heavy on the waste diversion side. So the committee had reviewed and suggested changes to the purpose. To notes, I'm not sure if this is the document that Councillor O'Sullivan was referring to earlier, but the attached terms of reference to my report was intended to be track changes. I do now see that eScribe has removed my track changes and PDF'd my document, so I do apologize for that. I'm privy to what council decides this evening, but to give an overview, the first paragraph of the EAAC proposed terms of reference remains the same. The jargon that is proposed to change is the A, C, and D noted after the committee shall, and then the last sentence of the purpose of that remains the same as well. So the clerk's office is suggesting one minor change to what the committee decided, and that is a provision, not a provision, sorry, but a purpose statement that says engage with experts to identify and suggest opportunities to leverage emerging and new technologies with the goal of reducing waste and minimizing the carbon footprint in North Grenville. We believe that this is an excellent initiative, which is why we have the Mayor's Task Force on Clean Technology looking into this more. Ultimately, that could be folded into the purpose of the Environmental Action Advisory Committee at a later time. We just suggest that it can be considered following the work of the task force, but ideally we are prepared to endorse the changes that EAAC has provided us because it's more encompassing of environmental action as a whole and doesn't just concentrate on waste diversion. To confirm, though, we have reviewed these terms of reference and don't feel that there's any other crossover with other advisory committees other than that one note on the Mayor's Task Force of Clean Technology. So I'm happy to take any questions, Madam Mayor.
Any comments, council colleagues? Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. I think this probably does address the deferral that we put forward for those minutes. The document, though, does not have a date on it, so I think in terms of making sure that we know what we're looking at is the most current document. I think all of them should be dated, please. The other thing is that there is a small reference to preserve ecological biodiversity, but there's not a lot of emphasis on landscaping and trees, etc. And yet there were 2 notices of motion that went forward back in December, and one of them was referred to this committee to review the notice of motion about the care and management of trees, and they were to report back in Q1. But when I reviewed their minutes, there's nothing about reviewing them or reporting back in Q1. It was on the agenda, but there was minimal discussion about it. So I think maybe it would be appropriate for them to have a stronger focus on landscape, trees, etc., and to please indicate to us when we will receive the report on the care and management of trees.
I think these are questions that ultimately would have to go back to the committee, really, if we were to include stronger language on care and preservation of trees. So, Ms. Remming, if that's feedback council wishes to provide, would we defer the adoption of the updated terms of reference then?
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. So to confirm, firstly, the direction does not require a motion, so I'm pleased with that if the consensus is that we provide this direction to the EAAC, and I'm happy to accept the deferral and report this back to them.
I'm sure they would be fairly amenable to that suggestion. So if that's feedback that we can provide, I think it would be well received.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I realize the co-chair of this advisory committee has been unavailable for a couple of weeks, so it's quite understandable, and that's fine, but just so it doesn't fall off the radar or fall into a crack. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So then, do we need a formal deferral? Yes, we do. And that is that council defer the proposed modifications to the Environmental Action Advisory Committee. Councillor Sullivan, you'll move in terms of its terms of reference, and that we'll leave it there. That's a deferral. At this time? Yes, I'm looking for a seconder, please. Who would like to second? Councillor Wilson, thank you. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that carries. Thank you. No updates on the game, Councillor Sullivan? Hearing anything? Nothing at all? All right. Then we'll move on to the private Blake Williamson Memorial Hall renovations. And I believe our Deputy Director is here to present that.
Facility Superintendent.
I'm so sorry.
It's all okay.
I mix up names and titles all the time, so thank you. I just assume every department has a deputy, and I'm clearly, in this case, a little mixed up. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Peschnik. It's nice to see you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. The report before you tonight is for the change of use renovations at private Blake Williamson Memorial Hall. The nature of the project is to upfit the facility for current day uses and future community use with accessible upgrades to the ground floor. Currently, the facility is still classified as a fire hall facility under the building code. To allow for further community access and more occupied users of the space, the change of use is under the building code has to be facilitated. This includes upgrades to the life safety systems, means of egress, washroom fixture count, accessible upgrades, and HVAC upgrades as well. During the design process, staff identified 2 assets of the facility that were at end of life, and the 2 assets identified were the roof covering and the floor finishing within the main hall. Staff recommend completing the 2 asset replacements during the renovation projects to maximize future community access to the facility. The intended end use of the facility is to further community access to facility space designed for mixed uses such as meeting space, recreational classes, and meet the needs of current users and tenants. Staff completed a thorough review of the tender results. As indicated in the staff report, the lowest bidder doesn't have the experience required for this multidisciplinary construction project. The second lowest bidder for the entire project was Aero Services, has the experience and good references based on the types of work required to facilitate this project. Staff recommend awarding the contract to Aero Services for $574,417 plus HST. Staff also requests 15% contingency, approximately $86,000 from the PRC reserves allocated as a contingency fund. The contingency fund is based on the nature of the work, as there might be some unforeseen site conditions. I would be happy to answer any questions pertaining to this report or the project. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you for that report, through you, Madam Mayor, to Superintendent of Facilities. What was the budget allocation for this? And is it from a previous year that we allocated a certain amount to finish, well, at least I hope it's finishing, the renovation of the William Blake Memorial Hall?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So in 2024, we completed the design of this upgrade of the facility. So we had funds allocated, and when we went through the budget allocation this year, we re-budgeted more funds for this project in the 2025 budget.
So we're not over budget, we're under or at budget?
We're at budget, that's correct.
It's great to see. I know that there was about $300,000 worth of work done in years previously, but this will take us from 60 to 109 people occupancy. Oh, and Councillor Wilson likes that a great deal, as do I. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Mayor Peckford, through you to Facilities Superintendent Joe Peschnik. Yes, I wanted to reiterate that I'm happy to see this being done because not only will it upgrade the facility, it will enable us to have another public facility that can accommodate more than 100 people at any given time, and I think it's great hall to be used. I want to ask, are the cadets currently still going to be using it once the upgrades are all done?
That's correct. So during this process, they were heavily consulted based on the design because obviously they're a user of the facility and we want to make sure that their needs are met. So we're trying to schedule this construction project during the off period of the tenant using the space. So the intention of this project is to be complete when they move back in the fall for programming.
And sorry, I didn't see it. Is there an expected completion date for this?
So in the tender document, it was May to end of July, based on the market and, still delays with equipment. We have about a month buffer before the user tends to move back in, so staff feel comfortable in completing the project before September.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Mr. Peshnik. Will this building then be fully accessible?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The ground floor will be considered fully accessible. There still are limitations with the second floor, but public access for other users besides the Navy League aren't allowed up there because it's a lease space for them. So we wouldn't, a typical rental client of ours wouldn't have access to it.
And washrooms are on the main level, so they'd be accessible?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Good news. Thank you.
I was glad to see the reference checks revealed some shortcomings with the so-called lowest bidder. Do the same tendering policies apply to Parks and Rec as they would to Public Works? And maybe that's a question for Ms. Dunlop. I know in the past we've been restricted in terms of feeling compelled to take the lowest bidder. Is there a different process now that gives us more latitude?
Thank you for the question, Your Worship. When we go through the RFP process versus a direct tender, it gives us more latitude in regards to reference checks, professionalism, et cetera, to make sure that we're getting the best product for the municipality.
And increasingly, we're using the RFP process as a way to enable more rigor on our side?
That is true. Through the RFP process, we do have that flexibility through a direct tender for something like a certain tonnage of gravel, a certain level of, a certain quantity of asphalt. Those are typically more black and white style products. The RFP allows for that variable within the procurement process.
Excellent. And then can I ask as a follow-up, it's not quite in relation to this, but as we move towards more public works projects, how do we make that decision between RFPing and tendering? Because as I think you're speaking of tendering when it comes to certain equipment or certain product, but as we go into other projects for which obviously outside expertise is required, at what point do we decide that the RFP is a better way to go? Mr. Finley?
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. So as I guess kind of the way you've alluded to it, if it's a direct equipment, it's a simple tender process. Once you start to bring in companies that need specialized services, that's when we look more to that RFP so that we can do those evaluations on past projects and what kind of projects they've done. So we are shifting our focus that way once you're bringing in specialized companies.
And would that include like roads and culverts and PXO? Would that be inclusive of more complex road projects or underground?
A lot of those, yes. When I'm thinking a simple cross culvert, road cross culvert, it's fairly simplified. We can work with that as a tender process. However, PXOs, once we get into, although it's done through the Parks and Rec, the multi-use pathway, some of those larger projects, that's when we're going to look more at that RFP process.
Great. Okay. Thanks. So back to you. It obviously looks like you have a very viable and credible recommendation, and it was nice to read that the reference checks really highlighted a very high caliber of work and the capacity to stay within budget, which is always nice. So council colleagues will look for the adoption of the recommendation in regards to the approval to award project PRC 2502 Private Blake Williamson Memorial Hall renovations to Arrow for the stipulated amount plus a 15% contingency, and that council directs staff to draw the 15% contingency from reserves. So a mover, please. Councillor O'Sullivan and Deputy Mayor, thank you. Any last comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great, that carries. Thank you. And then I think we're getting close to the end. So we have correspondence, much of which we've dealt with this evening. I do believe we have a notice of motion this evening, and Deputy Mayor, you're going to present that.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the clerk, I guess. I'd like to bring forward a motion that council directs staff to review our affordable housing policy and return with a report no later than Q3, or in Q3, recommending A, flexibility in our 25% target while maintaining a floor of 10 or 15%, and additional incentives for developers to achieve greater than the 10 or 15% affordability.
So this is just a notice of motion. Of course,
Yep.
we will deal with the notice of motion at a subsequent meeting. So this is just the proposed language. And of course, council can discuss at length the substance of this motion at the next available meeting. Is that right, Ms. Reming?
Correct, Madam Mayor. So in accordance with the procedure bylaw, Deputy Mayor has presented the notice of motion, and the plan would be for this to be discussed and deliberated on in more detail at the next meeting on April 16th, 2025. So you can expect to see this motion on the agenda for discussion.
And if myself or council colleagues have feedback on the substance of the motion in terms of language, timing, et cetera, we can provide that to Deputy Mayor via email or through our discussion on April 16th? Or is it now the time to provide that high-level feedback?
So if council has feedback for Deputy Mayor to consider, I would recommend that it be given to Deputy Mayor this evening so that it can be accurately captured on the agenda, which will be released later on this week.
So my only feedback is that instead of saying in Q3, we say no later than Q3 in the event that staff have the capacity to deliver mid-Q3. So
Sure.
it still gives them the latitude, but allows for consideration a little bit earlier should it come to pass. And then the other pieces of the motion in regards to the percentages are things that I think we have to consider. I recognize that absolutely, I think we felt that there's some complexity to achieving the aspirational 25%, which is in our official plan. So I would like to give more careful consideration to the proposed thresholds, Deputy Mayor, that you've articulated in your motion.
Certainly, my understanding is that can be discussed on the 16th.
Great.
This is
Okay.
simply a notice, and no, it is just a notice that this motion will be coming on.
I understand.
The 16th.
And I understand the.
I was just responding to my
I see.
colleague here.
Yes,
about-
gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so notice of motion is just so that council is advised of the fact that a more substantial debate, discussion will be happening at a future meeting. That being said, I just wanted to have on the record my, where I believe I look forward to more meaningful engagement on the substance of the motion. So before it gets moved at a subsequent meeting of council, Ms. Reming, certainly Deputy Mayor can play with some of that language or introduce variations of the motion should he wish. Is that right?
So based on the specific feedback received on the motion this evening, Deputy Mayor has already provided me with his draft, and I will consult with him following this meeting regarding any proposed changes. And once he is satisfied, we will add it to the agenda.
Okay, great. So then a notice of motion has been given. And I think we've completed that section of the agenda. Excellent. Any other notices of motion, colleagues? Not seeing any? Okay, so we do have, I think, what is now called miscellaneous or unfinished business as per our new procedural bylaw. We have none. I don't believe we have anyone left in the theater. Yes, but we do have Councillor O'Sullivan. Yes, go ahead.
Just a public service announcement that the Storm have won the game. 1-0.
So sorry we missed it. Congratulations. Woohoo! Do you know the score, Councillor O'Sullivan?
1-0.
Oh, that's a close one. Yeah, go. Yes, we can confirm and adjourn without you, Councillor Sullivan. Okay. So our confirmation bylaw is that bylaw 3325 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on April 8th, 2025 be adopted and passed. Councillor Wilson, would you mind moving that, please? Deputy Mayor, will you second? Thank you. Calling the question. Thank you. And then adjournment that the regular meeting of council on April 8th adjourn at 7:59 p.m. Not bad, eh? We'll ask Deputy Mayor and Councillor Wilson to move in second. All in favor? Good. And we'll go celebrate with the Storm team. Thank you.